this video, we're going to look at multiplication of complex numbers. So we'll start by looking at how you can multiply two complex numbers together, and then we'll do a few examples. So let's say we have two complex numbers. So I've called them a plus bi and c plus di. And I'm trying to times them together. So I've got them here in brackets. So we've got a plus bi times c plus di. What does this equal? Well, you just do exactly what you would do with real numbers. So you may have done this before in algebra when you have something like 2 plus x times by 3 plus x, say. If you want to multiply out the brackets, you have to times everything in one bracket by everything in the other bracket. So we just do the same thing here. So what do we get? Well, we will get a times c, so that's timesing a by c, plus a di, so that's just timesing a by di. And all we do there, so di is d, some real number, times by I. If we times that by a, some other real number, we get a times d times I. So if we knew what a and d were, we could times them together and get some single number multiplied by I. So that's all we mean here by a di is a times d times I. Then we're going to get b times c times I, so that's if we times c by the bi term. And then finally we'll get the bi term times the di term, which is plus b times d times I squared. So it's I squared because we have b times I times d times I. So that's b times d times I, which gives us b d I squared. But remember, we know what I squared is. I is defined to be the square root of minus 1. So I squared is minus 1 by definition. It's a very important thing to remember. So we can actually write this as AC. Now remember, as I just said, if I squared equals minus 1, then this term at the end, bdi squared, is actually just bd times minus 1, or minus bd. So we get AC minus BD for the real part of this number. So in these four terms, I'm gathering up all the real parts and putting them together. Because now that we've got four terms, we can reorder them however we like. And what we want is to get all the real terms together. So we have the real part of the number and then all the imaginary parts together. So we have the imaginary part of the number. So we have AC minus BD. Now the other two parts both have an I in them. So they're going to be the imaginary part when we put them together. It looks like the fourth term has an I in it, but as we said, because it's being squared, it's actually just minus 1. So it's actually a real number, not an imaginary number. So let's put the two imaginary parts together and we get AD plus BC times I. So I've just put the ADI plus BCI, factor out the I, and you get AD plus BCI. So let's try this on some examples. So compute the following. So A is 4 plus 3i times 2 minus 2i. So what are we going to get? Well, we've got A, B, C, D here. I'm going to label them so it's clear. So we get 8 plus 6. Where does that come from? Well, we do A times C. You can see that A is 4, C is 2, so 4 times 2 is 8. And then we do minus B times D. Now B is 3 and D is minus 2. We have to make sure we take account of the sign there of D. It's minus 2. So we have 3 times minus 2, which is minus 6, but then we're subtracting it. If you look at the definition, we have AC minus BD, so that's minus minus 6 is plus 6. So we get 8 plus 6. And then we add to that the imaginary part, which is A times D. So 4 times minus 2, which is minus 8, and then B times C, 2 times 3, which is 6, and then we multiply that by I. So I'm just using this box at the top that tells us how to times the two numbers together, and I'm plugging in the values we have. So let's work out these brackets. We get 8 plus 6 is 14, and minus 8 plus 6 is minus 2. So 14 minus 2i. Now let's try B minus 1 minus I times 3 plus I. What do we get? Well, we get -1 times 3. So I'm not going to label them A, B, C, D now. Hopefully you can just see what A, B, C, and D are. We have -1 and then a -1 in front of the I as well, and then a 3 and then a 1 in front of the I. So they're A, B, C, D. So to get the first bracket, we do A times C, which is -1 times 3. So -3, and then we do minus B times D. Now, B is -1 and D is 1. If you look at the two numbers, we have -1i and +1i. Times them together, we get -1, but then we subtract that. So minus -1 is +1. So we get -3 + 1. And then we do AD, which is -1 times 1, gives us -1, plus BC, which is -1 times 3, so -3, times by I to get the imaginary part. Work out the brackets, and we get -2 minus 4i. Now, if that was all confusing or unclear to you, I recommend watch the video again. Make sure you understand the box at the top, and try it yourself. So try doing A and B on a bit of paper yourself without looking at the solutions to see if you can get the same answers. But that is how we multiply two complex numbers together.
Blew a soft wind, as if that wind